Every October 29th, thousands of Iranians travel to a remote, tiered stone monument in the desert of Pasargadae. They are there to observe Cyrus the Great Day, an unofficial holiday commemorating a king who ruled over 2.5 millennia ago. These gatherings are completely unrecognized by the state. Instead, they operate as a form of cultural nostalgia, heavily mobilized as political dissent. People use the memory of an ancient monarch to push back against the legal and religious frameworks of the modern theocracy. It is rare for a figure from 500 BCE to retain any real political weight. To understand how a dead king can still threaten a modern government, we have to look at how that king built his power in the first place. In the mid-6th century BCE, geopolitical control relied entirely on physical subjugation. The prevailing superpowers of the era, like the Neo-Babylonian and Median empires, maintained order by leveling cities, deporting conquered populations, and ruling by terror. That was the standard operating procedure when a Persian tribal leader named Cyrus II inherited the throne of a small district called Anshan. In 550 BCE, Cyrus launched a direct revolt against his own grandfather and overlord, the Median king Astyages. Capturing the Median capital of Ecbatana, Cyrus made a highly unusual strategic choice. Rather than slaughtering the opposing Medes or selling them into slavery, he preserved their military command and integrated their aristocracy directly into his own ranks. He created a dual Mede-Persian identity. By absorbing the conquered elite rather than destroying them, Cyrus developed a new mechanism for imperial expansion, one driven by integration. This strategy reached its peak in 539 BCE. When Cyrus expanded his reach to the Neo-Babylonian Empire, he managed to capture the heavily fortified city of Babylon almost entirely without drawing a sword. He achieved this by framing his invasion as a liberation. Cyrus publicly restored the local Babylonian deity, Marduk, to high status, and famously allowed the displaced Jewish community to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. This clay artifact is the Cyrus cylinder. Covered in dense cuneiform, it records Cyrus's policies, ordering the restoration of religious sanctuaries and the return of deported peoples. By funding local institutions instead of burning them, he secured the fierce loyalty of the urban elites. Religious tolerance was highly effective statecraft. Pluralism allowed the empire to scale rapidly across thousands of miles without triggering constant resource-draining regional rebellions. Cyrus drafted the ideological blueprint, but an empire needs plumbing to survive. That infrastructure was built by his successor, Darius the Great. This map illustrates Darius's administrative grid. He divided the territory into 20 satrapies, each overseen by a triadic system of governors, generals, and treasurers. He tied them together with a universal currency and the 1,500-mile royal road, allowing messages to cross the empire in days. Yet the early Achaemenid state had a fatal flaw. Their military relied heavily on overwhelming numbers, a tactic that fractured against the highly disciplined formations of Greek hoplites, eventually leading to the empire's collapse under Alexander the Great. This stone relief captures a later evolution of Persian military power. By the Sasanian revival in the 3rd century CE, the Persian state had completely professionalized its military. Utilizing heavily armored cavalry, King Shapur I achieved the unthinkable, capturing Roman Emperor Valerian alive. Charismatic ideology and pluralism are excellent tools for initial expansion, but surviving centuries of warfare against global rivals like Rome required the centralized military architecture perfected by the Sasanians. Ultimately, even the Sasanian military machine broke down. By the 7th century CE, after decades of exhausting wars with the Byzantine Empire and massive plagues, the Persian treasury was empty. The state was easily overrun by the emerging Islamic Rashidun Caliphate. The throne was destroyed, the king was killed, and the physical borders of the Iranian state dissolved. But the underlying culture proved highly infectious to the people who had just conquered it. During a period known as the Shu'ubiyya movement, Persian intellectuals began asserting their literary and organizational heritage. They preserved their language and slotted their highly advanced Sasanian administrative models, tax codes, courts, and scribal systems, directly into the infrastructure of the new Abbasid Caliphate. An empire anchored strictly by cavalry disappears the moment its army is routed. A state built on administrative and intellectual synthesis embeds itself into the foundation of whatever replaces it. These towering columns at Persepolis are physical proof of a civilization that managed to outlive its own government. The Persians succeeded by universalizing the particular. They took their highly specific tribal customs, their scaling of bureaucracy, their horticultural techniques, their artistic motifs, and exported them so effectively that they became the permanent baseline for governance across the Middle East. Armies eventually fall to stronger armies, but by replacing pure subjugation with a deeply rooted system of administrative integration, Cyrus engineered an empire of the mind. That is why, thousands of years after his empire fell, his ghost still marches in the streets.